Hello and welcome. You're joining us for the premiere of the film that captured the live performance of When Air Meets Water 4, an aerial dance performance presented in Ipswich, Massachusetts in October 2021. My name is Amy Angel. I'm a volunteer with Ipswich Moving Company, the Massachusetts organization that brought you When Air Meets Water 4. It's my great pleasure to act in the capacity of host for tonight's live cast. As part of this hour-long event, we will be meeting the creative and technical team behind the October 2021 live performance event, as well as the filmmaker who produced the film. You'll be seeing the film in just a few moments, and for notes, we will be recording tonight's event for later screening and rescreening. Before we begin with the film, it's my great pleasure to introduce you to Janet Taisey Craft, the choreographer and founder of Ipswich Moving Company, and the reason we are all here to enjoy this event. Welcome, Janet.
Thank you, Amy. Welcome, everyone. I'm so happy you're joining us for the premiere of When Air Meets Water 4, the film. At the conclusion of the 20-minute film, you can join us in a conversation with filmmaker Anders Johnson, the dancers, and members of the artistic team. If you have any questions, we'd love to have you put them into your chat, and we will talk about those questions later in the program. Creating an aerial dance, suspending performers from the arches of a bridge over the Ipswich River might seem like a crazy and dangerous idea. But it's a logical extension of the work Ipswich Moving Company has done for many years. As a choreographer, I feel a strong affinity for place. The ever-changing beauty of the river as it flows under the graceful stone arches of the Green Street Bridge creates a stunning backdrop for the dance. It offers audiences a new way to experience and appreciate the river, the bridge, and a way to understand our natural environment that we live in. I've made dances that have been inspired by living in Ipswich and exploring the importance of the river. Dances about tides and marshes. I've done dances about migratory ducks, Ipswich clammers, the town wharf, and aspects of Ipswich history. An important part of the mission for Ipswich Moving Company is to bring dance to the community in both traditional and non-traditional ways, both indoors, in theaters, museums, gymnasiums, and we even performed in a circus tent at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, and at outdoor sites like beaches, parking lots, town greens, city parks, and on top of stone walls. So the idea for this dance took shape in 2016 when we performed When Air Meets Water for the first time as part of the Ipswich Illumination celebration. Since then, the dance has changed in a number of ways. We've added new sections, and we've experimented with changing the aerial equipment, particularly changing the length of the slings so that the dancers can experiment more with their relationship to the water. In 2019, we began a collaboration with composer-musician Chris Florio, for which he created an original musical score for the dance. Each September, the dance has been performed for enthusiastic and ever-expanding audiences that have now reached nearly 1,000 people. So this year, in the fall, we were thrilled to team up with Anders Johnson, a filmmaker, to create a new performance experience. What you'll see tonight is the result of our shared vision, the beauty and brave performances of the dancers, Danielle, Tabitha, and Jessie, and the incredible work of the artistic team and the production team. We'd also like to thank the Ipswich Cultural Council, the Institution for Savings for their financial support, and we'd like to give a special thanks to the town of Ipswich for believing in our project. We are especially grateful to the many donors who have helped us not only survive, but thrive throughout the pandemic. And I think the idea of us moving into film and into a virtual concert really has come out of that experience that we've had in the last 2 years. We are deeply appreciative of our donors who have been a continuing source of support for us. As I said at the conclusion of the film, please join us in a conversation with Anders and members of the artistic team. And now, get ready for When Air Meets Water Meets Film.
Welcome back. We've just been watching the film that captured When Air Meets Water 4, an aerial dance performance that was produced by the Ipswich Moving Company and originally performed in Ipswich, Massachusetts in October 2021. We'll be talking tonight with choreographer Janet Taisey Craft and other members of the creative and technical teams behind When Air Meets Water. First, some questions for Anders Johnson, the filmmaker who produced the film When Air Meets Water, the film. Welcome, Anders.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for being here, and thank you for watching.
Good evening. So having seen the performance live, which was a real treat, and now watching the film, I can say it's great to be able to see it again and in much more detail. Can you start by telling us about some of the challenges that you faced when filming?
Sure, I think that a primary challenge that yielded creative benefits certainly was the water itself, which I guess is fitting for the name. It's challenging to create a film or simply capture an image in the way that we would prefer while the performance is taking place. The dancer is whirling around and doing these different moves as part of the musical phrase in time to the music that's playing live as we're trying to capture it. And we have to move a boat around on a river and the tide is coming up, and we have a camera operator, and I'm on the boat, and I'm talking to Tyler, who is our fantastic boat operator. And normally, you would just move a camera closer or farther away to the right or the left in a normal setting on land. But on water, we needed to coordinate with our boat operator in order to get images that normally would be relatively easy on land. So that was one of the biggest challenges. And then secondly, the sun is setting over the course of this time, and eventually it's dark. So we're filming in the dark. We need to make everything look very similar for the film, but light is always changing. The lighting design was phenomenal and gets better and better as it gets darker and darker. But regardless, it's always a challenge to film at night and make it look good. And yeah, we did our very best with that too. So I would say this was probably one of the more challenging things that I've certainly captured as a filmmaker in my time.
Thank you. Well, I have to say, watching it, you wouldn't know that someone was on a boat, a moving boat, as you say, in a rising tide river, doing the film. Now, I'd like to bring Janet back into the conversation as well to talk a little bit about the collaboration, for one, and how the film differs from the live performance.
Oh, there's a lot to do. There's a lot of change there. And I think Anders and I spent many months meeting and talking about it, and as he would go through the next iteration. And I think one of the things as a choreographer I wanted to do is that in live performance, the audience is on the side of the river watching from a water street. And as we got larger and larger audiences, people were sort of piled back. And so the view was quite different. And we realized that the best view is really in the middle of the river on a boat. And so Anders was really game to do the project with us and was willing to get on a boat and play with the tide. And he developed a great relationship with our boat pilot, Tyler Fahey, who was really great in helping. But I think, Anders, I think you can maybe speak to this as well, but I think the idea of creating intimacy that you could do with the film that we couldn't see in that site specific with the audience so far away, that was a wonderful gift with the film. And to see, I always think of this dance as being extremely tactile. When air meets water, the dancers actually have that wonderful section of feeling the water. At one point you saw things dropping from the down upon the dancers, and those were rose petals. And at one of our performances back in, I think, 2016, leaves were falling, and it was just such a wonderful effect. So we added that into the performance. But So I don't know, Anders, if there's anything else you wanted to add about the collaboration. I thought it was fantastic. I mean, we really had a meeting of the minds.
Yeah, of course. And it was so fun to reflect on such beautiful performances and tie the very best of each into one cohesive film. And for those who don't know, we actually captured this video over the course of several days and then tied it together into the 20-minute film. So you're actually seeing wide shots of a live performance and seeing close-ups of specific performances that were done solely for the use of film. And then we put it all together and then used the soundtrack to tie it all together. So it was a lot of fun to work directly with Janet to help her vision move to the next level of film in a way. It's already fun to go watch. It's also fun to take in via film as well.
Yes, and I think that in addition to the intimacy that you were able to create with the film, and the textures, it was also it was so interesting for us to hash through all those different ideas of how, like, what was important in the dance, and what a great collaboration for us to go back and forth, and what are those moments that were really important to capture. And often Anders was able through film. I think the one thing that I learned from it is that we needed more film time. Always, we did three nights, and the tide's coming in, and the dancers are going to get buried under the water soon. And we just, Anders kept saying, we need more time. We want another day. We want another day. And I think that if we had our druthers, maybe that is what we would do. We would film for a week, and then we would have more options. But it was a great.
Oh, I wish we could film for a week.
Next time. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Anders. So before the performance of When Air Meets Water could have been captured in the film, there was also a creative partnership between choreographer Janet Taisey Craft and composer Chris Florio. So Janet and Chris, let's talk a little bit about that collaboration. What is the process? How much did the choreography influence the music, and how much did the music influence the choreography?
So do you want to start? You want to start, Chris?
Oh, sure, I'd be happy to. Well, the choreography 100% influenced the music because I started composing and putting the music together with a DVD of a previous performance that Janet did of When Water Meets Air from I think it was 2017. So the performance 100% influenced what I wrote and put together. And then I gave that to Janet, and she took that to the rehearsals with the new version. And this was a couple of years ago. This was before COVID, because the performance you just saw was the second time that I've written for this performance. So Janet took what I created and worked in rehearsals in the studio a couple of years ago, and came back and gave me some feedback. But it was all done on a fairly tight schedule, so we didn't have a whole lot of time to fine tune the details. And then COVID hit, and then Jenna had 2 years to reflect on what she wanted to change and improve. So when she put together this year's performance, she came back to me with a whole set of notes and said, we'd like this section to be longer. We'd like to change the music completely in this. And so she had all kinds of input for the music for this year's performance. And then I just did my best to create what she was looking for. And then we went through another and a little bit longer section of back and forth as they rehearsed.
Yeah, and what was so wonderful working with Chris is that I would say, oh, this section, it has a softness. I'm thinking of the unison section where the dancers are exactly in sync with one another, and then you found that beautiful melodic piece that you created for it, and so it was almost like whatever we asked, you were able to make it happen. And I think the instrumentation and how the range of energy, I mean, I think in aerial dance, especially working in the slings under the bridge, sometimes it's difficult. You can't move because you're not kicking off from the floor, so that you're into this softer. And so Chris's music really helped us create energy in sections where we needed it, gave us that sense of breath where we needed it. And both versions were wonderful. And it was great to have it grow and develop the second time through.
Yeah, it was really fun to get the chance to do that and refine it.
We don't often get to do that, so it was great. Yeah.
No, everything gets better if you get to do it enough.
So, thank you so much, Chris.
My pleasure.
Wonderful. Thank you, Janet, and thank you, Chris. And now to other members of the creative team behind When Air Meets Water. First, to the dancers, Jessie Boudreau, Danielle DiVito, and Tabitha Rodger. We saw all three of you in the film, and just if anyone sees this live, there's only 2 arches actually in the Green Street Bridge, so this is proof positive that it was filmed over multiple days. And my favorite part about watching the film is that it puts us closer to you, closer to your experience out there, to see it close. It's just so, you dance it all so beautifully and serenely and powerfully. I just love the film. I think what most people, what is it like to be out there, to do aerial dance, to be suspended in that position from a bridge and over a moving body of water? What is that experience like? And I go to, oh, is Jessie on?
I don't know if one of us should answer if Jessie's
I think
not
so. Okay.
available.
Apologies.
So, so there's a huge difference dancing like in the studio where, as Janet mentioned a moment ago, we have the floor to push off of, and a lot of our aerial productions we use that, or the ones I've participated in. Not all, but and definitely in rehearsal and in the studio and practice.
Possible. If everyone could please mute themselves if you're not one of the 2 dancers on here now. Sorry, Tabitha, go ahead.
And so when we don't have the water, when we don't have the ground to push off of, it's very different. One of the things that is always Chris, we can hear you. Chris, we can hear you. Live performance. So yeah, the tide is moving. It's a little dizzying. So we're quite adjusted to the equilibrium of like moving around in the apparatus. But we actually, this year, we've all had experience doing it. But in the past, like my first year doing the aerial performance over the river, I got motion sickness, which took me by surprise because I had never in rehearsal gotten motion sickness. But because the river is moving below you, it's like very disorienting. So we learn to not look at the water. It's like the number one rule. When we're up there is don't actually look at the water too much. Or when you do, you then have to like find the surfaces, the audience, or the surfaces of the walls to look at to like bring yourself back to equilibrium. And the fact that we have very little control of where we're facing, because a lot of times we can use a touchdown to turn ourselves when there's nothing to touch onto, and the rigging that we use, we have very little control over where we're facing. So that's always a really interesting improvisational aspect of our performances, especially over the river versus in some of our other more theatrical venues or studio venues.
Yeah. Danielle, how would you describe what we don't see, I guess, in the film is the audience, right? And I've been a part of the audience, so I know they're cheering you on. What kind of energy do you get from them? How does that influence your performance each night?
Yeah, so one of the most exciting things about doing this project, I think for all of us, is that we actually get to interact with our audience. So, like Janet said before, the audience is lined up on the street, just packed in. And also, there are people above us on the top of the bridge sometimes. And unlike a concert dance piece where the audience is really quiet and, they just applaud at the end, the audience is yelling and talking to us, and you can hear people. You hear little kids giggling and oohs and ahs from the crowd, and that it gives us a different kind of energy that we don't get from a concert dance piece.
That's wonderful. And the audience too it's a huge, I mean, there's little tiny kids, there's babies walking around, there's, folks of all ages are there from town. And that's probably different too from some of your performances.
Absolutely. It really opens up the audience to different people that maybe wouldn't walk into a regular concert dance piece.
Having now seen the film, and Jessie, you're on now. Thank you for joining us. Sorry, the first question to go into you. So
technical difficulties over here.
When watching the film, what do you see? I guess you've danced it, but now seeing yourself, seeing the other dancers dance it, does that bring you, to another point, to another level of understanding about the event?
I think one of the things that I didn't realize was happening sort of while we were performing is there were a lot of unexpected new elements popping up in the film. Like there was a beautiful background behind Danielle with the sun setting while she was performing. And you don't think of that while you're out there. You just think of this is what my choreography is. And there were a lot of those moments, the close-ups, that intimacy that Janet was talking about were beautiful. And again, unexpected with the overlaying of the close-ups over the full video. So I think some of that stuff, it takes the performance out of your body and adds like another element to the whole presentation, which is, I think, a great unexpected, unplanned element.
Thank you all. All right. Let's see. Thank you, Jessie Boudreau, Danielle DiVito, and Tabitha Rodger. And as we saw in the film and has been mentioned, there are technical challenges supplying light for the performance, which is happening at dusk and into the night. Anne Dresbach, your expertise in lighting solved those challenges, and we'd like to hear more about how you address those challenges.
Yeah, hanging lights under a bridge and without having your standard lighting locations like in a theater was definitely a challenge. Fortunately, the city had put some architectural lighting on the bridge, which helped significantly. The city also was able to provide some other lights that we were able to have in the boats with a few technicians holding them in their hands to kind of point at the dancers and keep that as front light. And another thing that I came up with was a company I work with called VDA had just recently purchased these lights called the Stereotubes. And they're about 1 meter long and are multicolored. I can make them any color I wanted to. And I realized that them being battery powered and wirelessly controlled, I could hang them off the bridge, put some diffusion on it to help disperse the light a little bit more. And I used just a standard color temperature to just kind of give nice warm light to add to it. And so that was kind of an interesting solution to that problem. A few years before, we had 4 dancers, and so I was only able to use 2 tubes per side of the bridge. And for this video with only 2 dancers, I was able to double up on the lights, which I think helped significantly with trying to get better light on the faces. One thing I didn't get to do is play with colors, but that was because I was also stage managing and running the sound. So I wasn't able to do all the normal things I do with lighting, adding colors and playing with that within the piece as well.
Well, the lighting as it was it's just dramatic and beautiful and simple, and it really serves to highlight the dancers. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we're nearing the end of the film premiere here. We want to bring everybody back on screen. I've got a couple questions from the audience that I want to hand out, which are for the dancers. So anyone can address these. One is, what is the feeling of performing over water? And I want to know, does it change knowing that you're going to go into the water at the end of the dance? What is the water temperature when you all drop in?
It's gold. It's so cold. We got wetsuits this year, and I've only performed. I've only done 2 of these. Oh, sorry, the 2-year-old. I've only done it twice, but one of the years, yeah, we did not have wetsuits, and it was even colder. So yeah, it is in fact quite cold. Another thing about the water is so we have to wait till like more than halfway through the dance till we're allowed to touch the water, which is actually a fun challenge as a dancer from the inside. One of the things that the audience might not notice, like we're so used to, as I mentioned before, like being able to touch down on the ground sometimes in the studio, that kind of holding ourselves up and making sure that we don't make contact with the water before, so that when we do, it's emphasized in as part of the choreography, um, is also like a fun little insider tidbit.
Yes. And there was a moment in the film where, Jessie, we can see you when you're doing the upside down Buddha, maybe
Sorry.
the move where
I
you're
was
hanging upside
using-
down and your hair just kind of reached the water. And I don't know if that was, intentional or sort of if where the sling is hung and where the tide is means that you're a different distance from the water potentially each night.
So that had everything to do with the time that we were filming and the level of the tide at that time. So when we first started filming earlier in that day, there was a good 1.5 to 2 feet from the water where my hair was not touching. But by the time we got to, the upside down portion of the film, the crown of my head was actually touching the water. So I had to get creative with how do I keep the choreography, but not let my hands go completely into the water, and how to change and just be able to sort of adapt to the environment around you, and which is a very challenging thing to do, especially with this piece where you can't touch the ground. So
Wonderful. Thank you. Let's see. And Janet, reflecting back now, I guess on this live event, on the film record of the performance, what have you learned from this collaboration with all these folks?
Well, I've learned something every time we do it, that how it changes, how the music changed, how the dancers bring new ideas. We always work in a very collaborative way. And I think seeing the film in its final version, I just have so many ideas. It's like, we need to do a new film. and probably, Chris, there would be some more ideas for some music changes. So yeah, I think it was a great project, and it's something that has grown and become sort of part of Ipswich in every fall. And we, people kind of track me down on weekends in the summer and say, now, when is that happening? We want to be sure. I'm going to bring my kids, and we all want to see it. So it's been a great community project and a way of just bringing awareness of the importance of the river and the beauty in this wonderful place we live in, that we can explore it and share. So I'd like to thank all of you who have participated in it and given your creative energy and your bravery to dance in it. And Amy, I'd like to thank you for moderating this event. This was great to have you there guiding us through. And a special thanks, I think, to David Angel for producing the whole event for us. So thank you all so much. I think that probably, Amy, unless you have a few words you want to say at the end.
I do.
Probably.
I do. Thank you.
Okay.
Yep. We're just about wrapping up the broadcast here. For more information about When Air Meets Water, about the Ipswich Moving Company, the dancers, the music of Chris Florio, the film work of Anders Johnson, and the lighting design of Anne Dresbach, please go to the Ipswich Moving Company website, which is ipswichmovingco.org. And there you'll find links to all of the organizations and individuals involved. You'll also find a link, once this gets posted, to rescreen and screen and share this film with friends and family. The Ipswich Moving Company Dance Foundation relies on community support to create new performance projects. Please consider a charitable donation to the foundation. Thank you all for joining us here this evening, and we hope to see you soon. Thank you, Janet.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Nice seeing you all.
Night.